NBA Big Threes that completely flopped. When the Celtics won the NBA championship with the formation of the Big Three, everyone got an idea in their head. But, as it is said that too many chefs spoil the food, no other Big Three was up to the mark. Welcome to Backboard, and today we're talking about NBA Big Threes that failed completely. You might think that if there are powerful players, then there's no way a Big Three would fail, but even players like Kobe can't make it work. David Stern, the league's commissioner, botches Kobe's initial attempt to put together a Big Three by scrapping the deal that was scheduled to send Chris Paul to the Lakers. The only issue was that Kobe was still playing with Pau Gasol, Nash, and Dwight Howard, who had just been acquired, and an all-star point guard who was 38 years old. 4 All-Stars and a past Defensive Player of the Year made up the starting lineup for the Lakers. Meta World Peace predicted they would go 73-9 and have the best regular season ever before the season even started. The worst prediction ever. Despite being an All-Star in 2012, Steve Nash could hardly walk in 2013. Dwight was still healing from a painful back operation that had reduced his explosiveness by 30%. And before the All-Star break, the Lakers had a losing record. Kobe lost it when he realized they might not even make the playoffs. In March, Bryant played an average of over 40 minutes per game and propelled the Lakers to a playoff place. However, Kobe paid the price in the season's 80th game. His 34-year-old body couldn't handle the strain. His Achilles ruptured, ending the Lakers' hopes of winning another title. And shortly after, the Lakers' elite squad disintegrated. Our next Big Three's lack of chemistry was their biggest issue, and they unexpectedly lined up on the wrong side of LA. For years, the Clippers had been the NBA's laughingstock, but after they selected Blake Griffin and acquired Chris Paul, the jokes were over, because it appeared that Blake or DeAndre Jordan would give their all if Chris Paul simply threw the ball up in the air. Nevertheless, despite all of the high points and victories during the regular season, there was always something lacking in the postseason. After a time of courtship, teasing, and press conferences, it became apparent that this squad lacked the X factor to win the championship. Each year, they suffered a devastating playoff loss in the first round against Houston when they faltered and wasted a 3-1 lead. Following Chris's, Blake's, or both of their playoff injuries, and eventually CP3 was traded after 6 years. Officially, the city had died. The Clippers, though, had plenty of time to disappoint us. The Nets also tried their luck in making the Big Three. The Big Three for the Nets was already made up of Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, and Brook Lopez, yet their new billionaire owner believed he had to make a good first impression. So the Nets made one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history, adding Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry. On paper, everything should have been ideal, as every starter for the Nets in 2012 or 2013 was an all-star. The Nets naturally think that they would rule the league in 2014, but that assumption was a grave error. The Boston-based players were over 100 years old as a group, and the Nets lacked a genuine captain. Brooklyn placed 6th at the end of the regular season. They just avoided losing in Game 7 to the Raptors in the opening round. However, they encountered a 280-pound LeBron James in the second round, who tormented them as though they were young children on the playground. Brooklyn's hopes of winning the title were dashed one season later when the season's curse forced the trade of Garnett. The Nets' failure demonstrated that money can't buy everything and that it takes synergy to win basketball games, because they were without any superstars or first-round picks. The next Big Three had huge potential, something that could beat the original, but the opportunity for this next great three to play together was never given. When James Harden realized he wouldn't win a championship in Houston, he requested a trade. The best 3 isolation scorers in the game were suddenly on one squad once Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant arrived at Brooklyn, and another dynasty was about to begin in the NBA. With Harden on board, the Nets could always field at least one superstar on the court, and when all 3 of them teamed up, they were virtually unbeatable. The Nets' offense was arguably the finest in NBA history when the Big Three were on the court, scoring 120 points for every 100 possessions against the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. The Nets destroyed Boston in 5 games, scoring an absurd 124 points per game overall. The most points ever scored by a trio in a playoff series in NBA history were averaged by the superstar trio of KD, Harden, and Kyrie, who combined for 85 points per game. But that's when the misfortune began. Before I tell you what happened next, you must do a layup and score by hitting that subscribe button to our channel, Backboard. Done already? Wow, you are good at basketball. Let's play together someday. But until then, I must tell you how this Big Three failed. The hamstring of Harden was torn. He would play with one leg during the first half of the Bucks series. After Game 4, Irving missed the next 2 games after twisting his ankle when landing on Antetokounmpo's foot. But because of KD's heroics, the Nets were forced to play Game 7, and after Durant scored a 3-pointer, they tried to advance. Buzzer! But KD's enormous foot stepped on the line, making the 3-point attempt, which would have been a significant grabbing point, only a 2-point attempt. Then Brooklyn lost the game and the series in overtime. Before the start of the following season, 72% of NBA general managers predicted that the Nets would win the championship and that KD would receive the most MVP votes. But then the scenario started to fall apart. At first, only Kyrie Irving spoke out against the coronavirus vaccine. Many people are unable to attend sporting events in New York. Despite the fact that all of his teammates had taken the vaccine, he didn't want to cooperate. The second issue was James Harden, who was unable to comprehend that Irving was unwilling to put himself in harm's way and take the shot. James publicly requested a trade after losing faith in the team and its potential to win the championship. The Nets were obliged to deal Harden for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and 2 first-round picks just a year after paying a king's ransom for his services. KD, Irving, and Harden were all active in only 16 of the 113 games they were eligible to participate in together. They had a 13-3 record in those games, so it's very regrettable that they erupted before giving themselves a chance. Charles Barkley frequently criticized the Nets and other elite teams, claiming that stars shouldn't work together or coordinate their strategies. But Charles may not remember or simply don't want to confess that he did the same thing after Phoenix's championship drought ended. Chuck made the decision to look for championships elsewhere and selected Houston, which was still a year away from doing so. Charles had a 32-year-old age. He was past his peak and older at the time, but he was still a force in the paint. This was all for today. Now we all know that having great players on your team isn't enough to win. Well, I'll see you at the next one.